Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and yes, I know my bookshelf is different. I actually tried to film a video of me rearranging my bookshelf. I wore a white shirt that day and filmed it after solar noon, so that video was a mess white balance-wise. So it's now aesthetically pleasing. Regardless, today we're here to do the Thanksgiving book tag. I don't really have much else to say, so let's dive on in. Question number 1, Brett. What book is pure fluff and has no real plot? I'm actually going to use a comic/graphic novel, and that is A Lot of Little Gotham. I am absolutely in love with A Lot of Little Gotham. So this is a comic book, obviously, that focuses around the Bat family. It's all done in chibi style, and it's all watercoloring, and it's just so aesthetically pleasing. It follows the Bat family throughout the year. I believe it begins and ends actually on Thanksgiving. One of my favorite little details about this graphic novel is in the beginning, you see the Penguin try to take over the Thanksgiving parade, and he's actually ruling over a bunch of turkeys, and they're trying to overrun the city. Batman and all the Robins come in, stop him, obviously. But Damian, the smallest little Robin, ends up adopting a turkey, and you see that turkey throughout the rest of the chapters, following through the rest of the year. And I love little details like that. And of course, it's watercolor. Like, you guys, look at how beautiful this comic book is. I am in love with it. And I've read all of the stuff that's out for it right now, and I do not believe they're making more. Again, this is cute and adorable. There's no real plot other than just following the Bat family throughout the year. Question number 2, Turkey. What book made you fall asleep? I put in Unkindness of Magicians. Now, I know a lot of people really like this book. I did not. I had such a hard time getting through this book, I actually ended up DNFing it. And Unkindness of Magicians is an adult fantasy kind of set in our world with a hidden magic world. Essentially, like, I believe it's every 28 years, a competition is held, and each family of the magical household send in one player to compete against each other to fight to the death and see who's going to reign over the magical world for the next 28 years, or however many the number is that I do not remember. My problem with this book is that it took so long getting to its point. It was a lot of, we're going over here to talk to this person, we're going over here to talk to this person. It was really political and like getting allyship, and I was promised a fight to the death, and I did not read a fight to the death. I read a political bore, and I do not like politics books. I have such a hard time being invested in them, so I just gave up on this book because I'm like, I'm not enjoying it, I'm not connecting. I'm looking at the words on the page, but they're not translating as words in my brain, so that was just great, so I gave up on it, and yeah. Question number 3, Gravy. What book made the whole series worth reading? Now, I picked Down Among the Sticks and Bones of the Every Heart a Doorway series. I have some issues with this series. Mostly, it's too short. Like, every single book is a novella, and I don't feel like you spend enough time with the characters, but Down Among the Sticks and Bones really was just like, I love this world, I love these characters, I love the backstory, because besides the first book, every other book that you read in the series is a backstory to the characters you met in book 1. Every Heart a Doorway is a series that focuses on the after. Kids go into the magical world, to the Narnia, to the Alice in Wonderland. They find this magical world, what happens when they come back into ours? How do they transition from this magical and wonderful and weird into the mundane and boring? So all the kids who go through this process of like switching between worlds have to go back to our world, and they end up going to a boarding school to help them learn how to adjust and function as normal human beings. And the first book is actually more of a murder mystery because a girl ends up dying, no one knows what's going on, and besides, that was, again, I was promised a wonderful book about kids integrating into the society of our world, from the magical to the mundane, and I ended up reading a murder mystery. Like, it was a great murder mystery and all, but it wasn't what I was promised. But I kept reading because I knew all the other stories, were the backstories, were their worlds. You get to see little bits and pieces in the first book, but Down Among the Sticks and Bones was just amazing. This book in the series follows a set of twins that we meet in book 1. They end up in a vampire, dark, highly logical world. One of them, who is raised to be this pretty princess, decides to run off with the mad scientist, and the one who was raised to be smart and a tomboy went into the vampire's castle to become the princess. They very much took this new world as a chance to switch roles, and I just found it so amazing the way that they played that. And I love it so much, and there was a connection with the first book that I found really pulled through, the way it handled, and I love it so much. Because, like, I felt like this book was the conclusion that we needed from the first book. It was what we needed to make that story complete, and I loved it so much. Question number 4, Stuffing. What book is packed full of action scenes? I picked The Blood of Olympus. Now, If you guys know the conclusion of this book, you know why I find it so funny that it ended up the way it did. But this book is nothing but that big battle at the end. It's that big fight, and you have all the characters that you've met throughout this series and a couple from the original series, and you see them clash and you see them fight, and it's so cool. This is, of course, one of the last books of the Hero of Olympus series number 2 of Percy Jackson. There is also Trials of Apollo series number 3, which pulls off the stuff that you get from this last series. It's a long line of books. You gotta read them all. But I found this one was just, it was that big action scene. It was that big final battle. And I just love the way that we got there because I just think it's so hilarious the way it happened. Question number 5, mashed potatoes. What books look good but then wasn't? I actually really like mashed potatoes. I don't know why this question is bashing it, but my answer for this is Meddling Kids. Look at how beautiful this book is. It's neon, it's Scooby-Doo, and it kind of has a Lovecraftian take on it, and then it just kind of sucked. So Meddling Kids, like I said, is kind of a mix between Scooby-Doo and Lovecraftian storytelling. You get this gang of kids who grew up solving mysteries at their summer detective club, and then one day, their final mystery that they took on was a little too much. It was a little too real, and it scarred the children for life, and none of them returned back to their summer, detective club. They all went on their separate ways. Years later, they come back together because they realize they never solved their final case. Sure, they unmasked a villain at the end, but there's something still out there, something that they didn't figure out, what was causing this mystery. And so they have to come back together as adults and fight the big bad and all that stuff, and I absolutely hated it. I have an entire rant on this book, and I cannot stand how it was done. First of all, they tried to pull off a female-female romance. It was awful. It was the way it was handled was so cringeworthy and just so upsetting. I like trying to find female-female romances in books because they're so rare and so hard to find. And this one, it just felt like they were putting in just to get that, oh, they have representation, so there has to be at least a decent book. It was not. The representation in it was absolutely horrible. And of course, the characters don't exactly match up one-to-one to the Scooby-Doo characters, but they clearly were trying to make a connection. It was kind of that uncanny valley feeling where it's these are the characters, but they're not. And there's also that question of what's real and what isn't, and half the time that question didn't get answered. And then of course you got to the final battle. It felt very much like, if you guys have read the ending of Naruto, it felt like that. And I love Naruto, do not like the ending, so I have opinions about this book, and that, when I say it like that, that's not a good thing. Question number 6, cranberries. What book has the sweetest romance? I actually don't like cranberries, but for the sake of this question, I'm going to pretend I do and suggest Welcome to Night Vale. I love Night Vale. I love Night Vale the novel. I love Night Vale the podcast. I specifically want to focus on Night Vale the podcast because they do have novel formats of their episodes. Welcome to Night Vale is a story that is told about this town. Crazy, terrifying things happen. But I think one of the best ways to explain it is they make the terrifying mundane and the mundane terrifying. Street cleaning day is a massacre. 5-headed dragons run for mayor, and faceless old women secretly live in your home. Everyone's home simultaneously at the same time. It's so cool and it's so terrifying, it's so lovely. Welcome to Night Vale the podcast. It's all told through a radio format. So you get to see this town through their radio show. Our narrator, Cecil Baldwin Palmer. The character of the show and the person who voices him have the same name, and I can never remember which one is which, so I'm just going to call him Cecil. Anyways, Cecil has this adorable boyfriend named Carlos the scientist. You see him, that's really the first arc of the story. It's Carlos enters in town and Cecil immediately falls in love, and he has to try and find a way to get Carlos to go on a date with him and convince Carlos, no, don't touch management, they will destroy you. And I just think it's so cute and so adorable, and I just love it so much. Of course, Welcome to Night Vale novel, Cecil is still in this, Carlos the scientist is still in this. It has slightly different characters though that are the focus of that story, but I cannot get over Carlos and Cecil. They are just the cutest couple in the world. Question number 7, corn. What is the corniest book you've ever read? Now, I don't know if it would be considered corny considering what time it was written. I honestly just think this was a product of its time, but that is the Stainless Steel Rat series. I'm not done with this series, but the first couple books that I have read, because I'm reading them in publication order and not chronological order, there's some prequels I haven't gotten to yet, but this was when was this written? I don't remember what year it was published, but this is an old series. Like, you cannot find these books in print anymore, and it's just, this is one of the classic sci-fi books. And our main character, Slippery Jim the Stainless Steel Rat, is a criminal in a universe where they have basically wiped out crime. And he's so good at his job, the government says, hey, we want to hire you to hunt down other criminals because you're clearly the best, and you clearly are the one person who can do what we cannot. And you can already see where it's set up. Like, our main character is set up to be this great, amazing. He's meant to be like this charming, charismatic criminal who can escape the law and somehow work along them at the same time. And I love it so much. It very much is a cheesy, corny book, but that was just the time period it was written in. These characters are seen as, obviously, they are the height of, like, masculinity. I don't know words, but you know what I mean. Like, this to them wouldn't be corny, but to us it's very cheesy, it's very corny, it's very much that series. Question number 8, Green Beans. What book is too long and needs to be shortened? The book is in a different room, but We Hunt the Flames. We Hunt the Flames is a great, amazing sort of Arab-inspired fantasy book. This is the first book in the series, and the second books haven't been released yet. But I want to come out and say that while I did really enjoy this book, it was too long. It took way too long to get to its point. It just felt like we spent too much time in the main character's home village before she set out on her adventure. The plot of this book is magic once covered the land. It was great, it was powerful. People who were basically immortal was ruling over the world, but they were happy about it. They were like content, they would listen to their people. Then one day the 6 sisters who were the leaders of this town and the world basically vanished, taking all the magic with them. And our main character is like, they are chosen to go off and retrieve the magic to bring it back to the world because their home village, which used to be a desert, has now been covered in snow and their town is slowly starving. We just spent way too much time in that village covered in snow. Like, I get it. Our main character, like, she grew up being a hunter. Like, people blame women for all the depressive stuff going on because if the 6 sisters didn't disappear, magic would still be in the land. So clearly women are to blame. So our main character has to pretend to be a man in order to hunt the forbidden woods and bring back her village, like, food so they won't die. But we spent so much time there. I'm like, why? Why? Question number 9, Pumpkin Pie. What book do you read to get you out of a reading slump? Carry On. I read Carry On way more than I read any of my other books. Like, whenever I just need something funny and spoopy and like kind of reminds me of fan fiction but is still an original novel, I read Carry On. Carry On is sort of a spoop parody of Harry Potter. Simon Snow, our main character, is the worst chosen one to ever be chosen. He is a person of magical descent, but he's the first magical person to grow up outside of the magical community. He is so bad at magic, he uses a sword. His roommate is Baz, and he's convinced Baz is trying to kill him. He is convinced Baz is a vampire. Baz actually is like, he's from a dark family. He's from a family that's like, you have to kill off Simon Snow because he's a threat to our cause. But Baz is like, I actually really have a crush on Simon. So it's very much a dreary situation that if they had a healthy, functioning relationship, if you again, this is very much based on fan fiction. And actually, funny story about Carry On, it was actually a fan fiction that a character was writing in one of this author's other books, and people just fell in love with the story that this character was writing about. The author's just like, I'll just make it its own book, and so it's great, it's lovely. I read so much fan fiction, so I just love the way that I can see the parodies there. And whenever I can't bring myself to pick up a book, I pick up fan fiction, and whenever I feel like I need to get back into reading like actual published novels for my Goodreads account, I pick up Carry On because it's a nice transition. Now, there is another book that I was originally going to put down, but the thing is that book was so good it actually put me in a reading slump because I am now of the opinion I will never read a book as good as this. That book is Daisy Jones and the Six. I read this in one day. And after I finished reading it, I'm just like, that's it. I'm done. I don't ever need to read another book again. This is the masterpiece. So as much as I love this book, as much as I think this is the masterpiece, this is what put me in a reading slump that even fan fiction isn't able to fix for me at the moment. So I'm not currently reading anything. I'm just listening to crime podcasts. So yeah, kind of an opposite of the question I was asking, but you guys should read this book, and you guys also should not read this book because it's just that good. And finally, question number 10. This isn't really a book question, but cat or dog, what is your favorite Thanksgiving treat that you would steal from the table? Pumpkin pie. Or apple pie. Mostly pumpkin pie. My family actually has this ongoing joke. Whenever we leave pies out to cool, we would come back and a tiny little sliver would be taken from it. Like, someone in the house was the culprit, but honestly we all probably were, so we didn't do anything about it. So, as much as I love Thanksgiving, it's all about the pie for me. Like, don't even serve me anything else. It has to be pumpkin pie. So those are all the questions for the Thanksgiving book tag. Thank you guys all so much for watching. As always, I will leave the original video down below. And, I mean, while you're there checking out that, maybe you guys can hit like and subscribe. You know, always an option. I would love, like, just to, like, slowly gain more people into this community. Just, I want connections with human beings. I guess really that's it. So, I mean, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.